I'm good, brother. I will have a patty melt from Whataburger in my hand in several hours from now, so I am fantastic.
You guys are about to travel back. It's been a long 30 days or so down there at Oxnard. But I just want to say, on behalf of Cowboys Nation, man, appreciate the coverage that you've been giving us both here on Twitter. It has been fantastic, man.
I appreciate y'all, man. Y'all are who I do it for. So I'm out here cooking it up, and appreciate all the love and all the support and all the people who have been tweeting me. The people with the brain that have been tweeting me. The other people, they get what they ask for. But yeah, man, I appreciate all the love, man.
Y'all better leave this man alone on there. I tried to tell y'all. I tried to. Let's get some updates on the final Oxnard practice, which look, it seemed like it was pretty heated down there. So I'll put a pin in that. I want to ask you about that here in a second. But I think the most important update all Cowboy fans want to know about is Tyler Guyton, who had left practice yesterday. Can you kind of just give us the rundown on his situation and his status for Saturday's game?
Yeah, it kind of caught me off guard in the aspect of I had just been watching him because no video was allowed during team drills yesterday, but during several team drills, I was watching him and he was moving just fine and nothing was off. And he came off the field to get some water, took his helmet off, and then he kind of walked off to get evaluated. But he wasn't limping or anything. So, one or two things. Either they were checking for like cramps. And in my mind at the time, I was speculating maybe he had a cramp or, maybe the guy just had to use the bathroom. I mean, he's human. That happens. But I also said on Twitter at the time, I said it could be a Brandon Cooks issue because if you guys remember against the second scrimmage against the Los Angeles Rams, Brandon Cooks removed himself from practice. And it turned out to be because he had some soreness in his knee. Turned out to be completely fine. They're holding him out for precautionary reasons. Cooks is going to meet them back in Dallas. So he missed practice this week, but not because of the knee soreness, but because of a personal reason that's non-related. But turns out Tyler Guyton was dealing with the same thing. He removed himself from practice on yesterday. I was told after practice by one of the higher-ups that it's just knee soreness, and it was told to me, quote-unquote, it's not a big deal. So let's take that and run with it. Also got a side update on Wanye Thomas. He missed practice with a groin injury, but I was told yesterday that it's quote-unquote minor, nothing to worry about as far as the regular season is concerned. So for Tyler Guyton, as far as this weekend goes, money on the table, I wouldn't expect to see him on the field. I think he's bubble wrapped so that he can be on the field and 100% healthy against the Cleveland Browns is my best guess. Especially considering he's dealing with the knee soreness only a couple of days before this weekend's game.
That got me thinking real quick, if I could throw a curveball here, about some guys that could potentially not play tomorrow. We're talking about some maybe Royce Freeman, or not tomorrow, Saturday. Royce Freeman's a veteran. Will he suit up? I know Cooper Beebe in that center situation is going. Are they going to bubble wrap some of these guys going into this game? You talked about Wanye Thomas dealing with an injury. Like, that got me thinking now, man. Is there anybody that might sit down that might surprise Cowboys Nation?
I think anyone that sits will likely be precautionary or just flat out injury related. So, for example, I don't know that DeMarvion Overshown plays this game. And I say that because he's dealing with a hip pointer that he suffered against the Rams in that second scrimmage. And that also is minor, but they're being extra cautious with him for obvious reasons. And to the point where he didn't practice yesterday. He didn't even have on pads yesterday. So he was just doing his side work with trainer Brett Brown. But the fact that he didn't even have on pads yesterday kind of tells me that they're going to bubble wrap him for this Saturday and tell him to, see you in Cleveland type thing. I think the same is going to be true of Wanye Thomas. If I had to bet, I think it's going to be true of Tyler Guyton. I think Cooper Beebe plays because the way they're positioning it, although for all intents and purposes, I believe that's your starting center. He still needs reps. So just like Tyler Guyton, I believe, would be on the field, even if it was just one quarter against the Chargers. I think he'd be on the field if he didn't have this knee soreness. Cooper Beebe is completely fine, so I think he will play. I think on the defensive side of the ball, you're talking about Wanye likely not playing, which would mean more reps for a guy like Julius Wood in that battle at safety. And so I think those, if it's a person that's not playing, it's either a veteran who doesn't need to, e.g. Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Jake Ferguson, those types of guys, Zach Martin. But if it's, someone who's not that, I think they're playing. Like you mentioned, Royce Freeman. I don't see a reason why Royce Freeman would not play, considering the running backs battle.
Still
It's not
ongoing.
done. It's not complete. Right. It's still on and popping. So, yeah, I think Royce Freeman takes the field.
Okay, gotcha. Like I said, yesterday was the final practice in Oxnard, right? And we didn't get any video from you guys, which it is what it is. You guys weren't allowed to have any video, so we got a lot of tweets and articles. Before we get to who I want to know from you who stood out there. There was a big scuffle or fight or something at the end, and I feel like that was very on brand for how competitive this camp was. It just makes sense that the final play they get into it.
Man, the actual fire that occurred here on
by
campus.
The way, glad you're okay from fire. By the way.
Yeah, I'm glad everybody's okay, man. That was quite a thing, and it was just for people to know that actually was not a small fire. I'm glad that all the players were doing their walkthrough at the time, because that actually was a fire that nearly took that particular building out entirely. So shouts out to Oxnard Fire Department and Police Department, first responders getting on the scene quickly. But I feel like that foreshadowed what happened the next day, which was yesterday in practice, because that fire definitely transferred itself onto the field, man. Team drills, it's been feisty this training camp between, Cowboys versus Cowboys, Cowboys versus Rams, Cowboys versus Rams again. But yesterday, I can honestly say I had not seen them going tooth and nail. Yesterday felt like two playoff teams going against each other, like a playoff defense going against a playoff offense. There was a whole lot of jawing and yammering and trash talking, and some ugly things were said across the ball from both sides. And it was really on and popping, to the point where there are two different situations that kind of escalated to fights. In the first one, and it had been bubbling that the entire afternoon, and a lot of it was instigated by players like Trayvon Diggs, who was relentless in not only his coverage, but he was in the ear of every single receiver he covered. And one of those was Jalen Brooks, and we'll get to that in a second. But I actually remember hearing Trayvon Diggs. I couldn't remember what receiver he was talking to still, but he said out loud to the guy in his face, he was like, "If you catch a ball on me, I'll give you $1,000." Oh. Okay. Yeah, okay. Trayvon Diggs, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, the guy didn't catch the ball on him, so Trayvon kept his $1,000 in his pocket. But that's the kind of energy that was like permeating practice yesterday, and it got to the point where it popped off when Jake Ferguson, it was a red zone drill. Dak Prescott hits Jake Ferguson over the middle. He gets stopped at the 1 yard line, but in the process of getting stopped at the 1 yard line, he gives a stiff arm to Donovan Wilson. Dono pops up, gets in his face about it, some shoving, things about to go crazy. Offensive players come to the aid of Jake. Defensive players come to the aid of Dono. Again, I'm telling you, this was like two different teams, not the same, not everybody on the same roster. Coaches run in. Al Harris runs in to break it up. Shoddy runs in to break it up, and that was part one. So about 3 plays later, red zone drill, go from the 1 yard line. They hand the ball off, and he stopped at the 1 yard line. I believe it was Royce. Got stopped at the 1 yard line, and then all of a sudden, the scrum at the 1 yard line from the tackle becomes a melee, and everybody just starts kind of rumbling on the ground. And again, coaches had to come in and break everything up, but they didn't stop practice. They just let it keep cooking. So thankfully, no other fights after that, but the intensity was still there. Trash talking ratcheted up even more so after that second rumble, and then it ended with Jalen Brooks for the only person, because Trayvon Diggs had so many reps and he won every single rep except the final one. Jalen Brooks put him in a blender. Red zone drill from, I would leave, the 17 yard line. Dak Prescott drops back, looks right, and I was standing right there with the back pylon on that right side, which was the left side of Dak Prescott. Jalen Brooks runs an inside-out route, and he ran it so nasty that Trayvon fell. Touchdown. Brooks turns around and spins the ball at Trayvon as he's getting up off the ground. Offense goes nuts, and that ends camp practice in Oxnard, the Cowboys.
Wow.
Absolute cinema.
Wow.
Cinema.
Yeah. Hey, I'm doing the Scorsese. Wow. Cinema. Hands up.
Cinema.
That's amazing, man. And you were bringing up Diggs, and I was just thinking about the Cowboys were missing that type of fire, that type of dog mentality. I think when Diggs went down, and of course the whole team was hurt when it happened. Hence week 3, everybody's heads weren't in the game. But in the postseason, you knew they missed that too as well. And just to have that back, that fire, man. Oh, and what a way to end practice. I wonder. Let me know here. As we're hitting the 15-minute mark shortly. There were a couple guys that stood out to you in this final practice that you wrote about. Brooks sounds like he was one of them. Can you elaborate a little bit more on Brooks and a couple other guys that stood out in this final practice?
Yeah, Brooks got his plays off. A couple of the bigger catches that he had didn't have anything to do with Trayvon Diggs. They came with Trayvon Diggs not in coverage. For the most part, when Trayvon Diggs was in coverage, Brooks couldn't get anything going until he hit that walk-off, which was just fantastic. So I know some people were asking me, what does my wide receiver depth chart look like? And I continue to say I don't see how anyone can pencil in not pencil in Jalen Brooks on the wide receiver depth chart. I think Jalen Brooks has to make the 53. Has to make the 53. But outside of Brooks, we had, let's see, I'm going back through the Israel Mukuamu.
Yeah, Izzy Wood, yeah.
Israel Mukuamu, find a way to keep him on this roster. I know that you have 4 definitive safeties in Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, Marquise Bell, Gabe Thomas. Find a way to keep Israel Mukuamu. I don't know if that means you carry 5 safeties or if you treat him as a defensive back as far as allowing him to go between safety and like nickel or whatever the case may be. Figure it out, because Israel Mukuamu had a sequence yesterday that just absolutely floored me. Tyron Billy Johnson got him one time in the end zone with a catch, turned around, stood over him, pumped his muscles and was talking all this trash. And Izzy popped up and literally said, okay, do it again. And the next 3 reps, no matter, once was Billy Johnson, the other was, I believe, Cropper, and I can't remember who the third one was in that 4 rep sequence. But the next 3 reps in that 4 rep sequence were all pass breakups. Izzy talked trash the whole time, turned around after the 4th one and just stared at Al Harris. Al Harris walked up, gave him a high five, and said, that's how you do it. Find a way to keep Mukuamu on the roster. Julius Wood, that young man is coming along very quickly. I don't know how you figure out how to keep Julius Wood and Israel Mukuamu. So Julius Wood is a practice squad lock for me, but you might have to risk him to waivers first. That's just the numbers game. But he's having a fantastic back end of camp. And then John Stevens Jr., who just continues to get targeted heavily, more and more heavily over the course of training camp practices from Dak Prescott. Not Trey Lance, or not just Trey Lance, not just Cooper Rush. Yesterday, I counted 11 targets in practice from Dak Prescott to John Stevens Jr. That tells me they're building something on as far as first team goals for John Stevens Jr. We know that he's going to make the roster, but the fact that QB1 is doing so much work with him tells me they're putting some packages there for him. So exciting stuff there.
Man, there's so much there I would love to get in more depth on, and I'll probably do it once you're gone, but excellent updates from Oxnard, man. I know you're about to travel here. You've been working hard, one of the hardest workers down there. Just want to say before you go, once again, appreciate it. You've been amazing, and we'll keep up to date. Once you get back to Dallas, I'll see you down there for a couple practices.
Absolutely, and I'll give everyone because I know everyone wants to know what the latest is on the Linval Joseph situation.
Yes, please.
The confirmation from the team aspect has not occurred yet. So to give everyone a really quick insight into it, yesterday the news breaking that's from the agent and player side of it. When I followed up with the Cowboys, and I want everyone to keep in mind that the guys who are negotiating this deal, they're in the building across from me. Okay, so I walked over there and I had a conversation with them. But it's not done yet. Now, that's not to say it's not expected to be done, because as we have this conversation, I do expect that the deal will get done. But they're still working on a couple things contractually to get the deal done. And I'm actually going to speak with Mike McCarthy a little bit ahead of 10 o'clock Pacific time. So hopefully he can go ahead and confirm it for me. And if so, keep an eye on my Twitter at Voice of the Star, because I'll drop the confirmation there. But I'm working it, trying to get it done for y'all.
I already know you're working at it, brother. We will definitely Stay locked on your Twitter, and once this thing is confirmed, Cowboys Nation will obviously rejoice because finally the Fat Boy are back.
Oh, hey, better still, if they've been following the scientific method on every Friday, then they would know the first place they heard about the potential addition of Linval Joseph was right here.
Yep.
So I'm not saying, but I'm saying.
What he's saying.
Stick with Steele and I. We got you.
Keep rocking with us, man. Hey, safe travels, Pat.
Yes, sir. Talk to us soon.